Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Mafia Roundtable with Dominic Sicali and my co-host Joe Barone. Yes, that's right, Joe Barone. We're back together again. Like I said before, Mutt and Jeff and Abbott and Costello. We're here coming at you, and we're going to be collaborating and going back and forth with things within the Mafia. We're going to be telling our stories as they were when we were on the streets together in that life, and the dangers that come with that life, especially for Joe, who was working with the FBI for 21 years. He was around me, never set me up. He could have had me very easily. So I'll let Joe, go ahead, take over.
Hey guys, how's everybody? Thanks, Dominic, for having me as the co-host, and I really appreciate it. We're gonna give the audience a lot of good stuff.
No, thank you, Joe. I'm glad. I feel like I've gotten my brother back. And we'll let people know. We'll go into other episodes. And because there's a lot to be said about when I first heard that you were cooperating. I'm sure that people want to know that. My feelings, what I had to say. Was I looking to kill you at that point? So we'll just go back and forth with different things. But today we owe it to the people. We left off on the last segment about, I think, Eddie Kavanov we left off. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes, that is, and Bobby Blue Eyes and a few of the guys.
Yeah, we'll have fun with this one because it's funny. I've been doing this now a little over a year, Joe. February 14th was the year anniversary, and there's so many stories that even with Eddie Kavanagh that I forgot about and I didn't even mention. So us going back and forth will be great, and also I would like to address a lot of people's comments, and that maybe will come at you people live once a month. Joe and I will answer all questions. We'll go live for a live interaction with us, and this way we could address things, whatever people have, their comments, their concerns. But I noticed a few people, Joe, like somebody said, well, watch Dom and Joe not last and it'll be over soon. And I'm thinking, I go back with Joe over 20 years, 25 years. And I don't think we ever had an argument out there on the street. Did we, Joe?
Not even one. As a matter of fact, it was more the opposite. We actually laughed a lot. We enjoyed each other's company. We used to sing. I used to sing songs. I mean, to be honest with you, I remember being in the city around Christmas time, and that song came out. It wasn't me. I forget how it was.
Oh, Shaggy.
Shaggy, yeah. And we were singing that song, and we had a ball. I mean, it was cold out. It was, and being in New York City around Rockefeller Center, around the tree we were. Yeah, people don't understand. I mean, I can understand where they're coming from a little bit, but at the same time, I'd like for them to understand our relationship so that they could understand why, like you said in the beginning, why we were so close and all of that.
And folks, what I'd like to do is, Joe will also do, is we'll do a segment on the Genovese crime family, because that's originally where I was, and Joe as well, especially his father was there. He was a soldier in the Genovese crime family. And we'll talk about how I was groomed, how I was brought up, the do's and don'ts of the Mafia. And then we'll take it from there. But since we were basically in the same crime family where we started, I think it'll be good, Joe, if we interact. We'll do an episode about that as well.
That sounds good. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people don't realize how powerful the Genovese family still is and always was. And we're going to put some terms out there. I'll give one, just a little hint about, because you were with them, I was with them because of my dad. And supposedly I still had what they call papers with them. If a lot of people probably won't know that expression, but you and I do, and we can elaborate on that now or later. It's up to you. But there's a lot of inside information that they're going to love.
Yes, definitely, Joe. I think we'll elaborate later on. But let's get started with today's show. But first off, people, I'd like to thank our sponsor, E.G. Vodka and Champagne D Rock. Champagne D Rock comes out of Champagne, France. excellent champagne. We're working on getting that on the website to purchase it online. But right now, go to egvodka.com. Order it today. You order 6 bottles or more. I'll pay for the shipping. Shipping will be free. And it's 100% organic, gluten-free, excellent vodka. We have 3 flavors. We have the regular rosemary, lavender, and Earl Grey sage. They're all really good. So if you want a good tasting vodka, premium vodka at a discounted price, buy EG Vodka today. You'll love it. You will not be disappointed. With that, folks, Joe, take it on over. And now the ball's in your court. So I guess start off with Eddie Kavanov. How'd you know him? What'd you hear about him with his case? What went on?
So I met Eddie Kavanov when I was doing time in Otisville in the 90s. He was close, and he was hanging around. Actually, they were cellmates. He was hanging around with Ralph Giordano, and if you remember, they had the Giordano Funeral Home in the Bronx.
Okay, so you're talking about Ralphie Giordano, the older one who wound up cooperating.
Yes, he wound up cooperating. He wasn't in the beginning, to be honest with you. He did catch another case while he was in there. Believe it or not, he was. I tell you, this was pretty ingenious. He did come up with a scheme, and he started making all the people who came here illegally. He was getting them papers, but his brother was helping, his wife was helping, or his girlfriend, I believe it was, and so they arrested them, and then to get them off, he did cooperate. I'm not sticking up for him, but that's really what happened. But he made like over $200,000 while he was away.
Wow. Now, Joe, I'm not sure if you know or not. His wife, he married his. I don't know if he did marry or they were common law wife, but that was his cousin Anne Marie. Am I correct?
Yes, I don't know if it was his first cousin or not, but they were in love. Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was his first cousin. And how I know, we were very close with the Giordanos in the neighborhood, especially my uncle Pete the Neck. And actually, there was one night I recall when I was with Ralphie. We were partying, hanging out, drinking, doing coke, and my uncle Peter wound up coming to the house early in the morning, and he saw like we were just hanging out. We were all messed up, having laughs, fun, and he was like, "Oh my God, what are you two doing?" And we're like, "Be quiet, don't worry about it."
Well, I'm going to tell you something. You don't know, but I actually met your uncle actually before I met you, believe it or not. It's kind of a funny story, but I mean, it's quick. I just met him. I didn't know who he was. I met him at your cousin Matthew's house.
Okay.
May he rest in peace now.
Yeah, my uncle was a hoot. We'll go into stories with him, but especially after he had a few drinks in him. I mean, he was very witty. He was sharp. He was quick. But he always, as Vinny and Bruno told me, so I was trying to pull him. My uncle was around the Lucchese crime family. He played a part in the movie Goodfellas. And from Buat, who he was around, Anthony Buat, who was actually a capo. And I think at one time he was an acting boss in the Lucchese crime family. To Vinny and Bruno, they said, if your uncle comes here, you have to have a chair on your back with him because he was always getting into some type of shit. But we'll go into another story about that. Let's go back to Eddie Kavanov, Joe.
So Eddie now, I didn't know who he was or anything like that, and he was kind of funny. He got a job in the kitchen, and he was giving everybody free food. Let's face it, we were starving in there. We're not used to eating that kind of food. So as a matter of fact, he said to me, he said, "Look, Joe, if I get caught giving any extra food, they're going to throw me in the box." I says, "Okay." So he gave me an extra hot dog. Matter of fact, behind me on the line was Vic Amuso, because that's where I first met him too. Anyways, the lieutenant that was there, the CEO, saw me. He goes, "Hey, where'd you get that extra hot dog?" So Eddie started taking off his cap that they wear in the kitchen, because he thought I was going to rat him out. I said, "Lieutenant," I said, "be honest with you, I found it on the floor. I'm so hungry, I picked it up. I'm just going to rinse it off and eat it." He said, "That's the best excuse yet." He said, "Get the hell out of here." So I saved Eddie from going to the box. We used to have this long table in the laundry room where we put a sheet over it, and all of us were there. Now I don't know if you remember a guy from Mulberry Street. They called him Frank. His name was Frankie Martini. They called him Jupiter because he had a big head.
Oh my God, Joe. That's another story in itself. I met Frankie Jupiter in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. So we'll go into Frankie another time. We listen. We can get sidetracked very easy with these stories.
I got some good ones with him too, but that'll be. But I'll get back to Eddie. So we had this long table, and we used to make a toast all around us. We used to say, here's to Abe Relish, a great canary. He could sing, but he couldn't fly. And I don't know if people remember him, but Abe Relish was cooperating with the government back in the days, and they wound up, the marshals were guarding him. They found out he jumped out of the window, committed suicide, they said. But anyway, Eddie and I got close, and he had told me a story about he was a drug dealer. I didn't know what he was in for.
Well, I known Eddie, I used to stay a lot more so with his brother Frankie Kavanov, who was a dangerous kid. And I mean, I love Frankie. He had balls of steel. But Eddie was known as, also in my time while I was out on the street, as a drug user. And I think when he started dealing drugs, I think he was more or less an enforcer for Robert Pasula. I could be mistaken, but that's what I heard. And I was locked up at the time.
I don't think you were mistaken, because I didn't think Eddie had it in him, but then he had actually told me about the two murders he committed in the car, because it's kind of a weird story. He had a friend of his was in the car and wanted to take the ride with this guy. Eddie was actually going to get rid of the guy. His friend was a good friend of his, insisted on going. He told him, "Don't come with me, don't come with me." The kid came, and because he came with him, he shot him too.
Wow, that's
So Eddie had some balls on him, if you know,
so
do that.
Let me ask you something. Eddie told you about this homicide?
In Otisville, yeah. He told me the whole thing from the whole 9 yards. Told me how he met, where he drove the car. It's kind of funny. My friend lived in this house. They rented this house, and he actually pulled the car into the driveway. He told them, "We got to go over here," and they pulled into the driveway, and that's where we got them.
Wow. Let me ask you something. Didn't they find those bodies by Orchard Beach?
No, in Larchmont, New York.
Okay. All right.
So his father actually lived in a building about a half a block up the street from there. That's why he knew the area. If you remember the New England Thruway, they had the toll booth.
Yes.
You pay the toll and you get right off of there into Larchmont. And then he made another left and two lefts, and then he pulled right into the driveway and whacked him.
Oh, wow. Let me ask you something. Did Eddie ever cooperate, or
He did after this, yeah, because they had him dead to rights. What happened was he couldn't hear after he shot them because the car windows was closed. So he was kind of like that for a few minutes, and then he had his white tracksuit on. The blood got all over him, so he ran up the block. So he made a phone call to this girl. This girl picked him up. He threw the stuff in the trash can, that type of deal. She gave him a change of clothes, and that's pretty much how it went. But because it was Larchmont and the borderline of the town of Amerenik, the state trooper barracks were right down the street. I mean, he had, like I said, he had balls. As a matter of fact, I was having a problem with one of my friends who dated my girlfriend when I was away, and he said, "Listen, I'm going to be getting out on bail. Do you want me to take care of it?" I said, No, thanks. I appreciate it, but no thanks. Because I knew he was capable after what he told me.
Right. Now, Joe, I find that weird because in our life, as you well know, coming up as well, when you kill somebody, you're never supposed to talk about it, period. So do you think, knowing Eddie, he already had in his mind he was going to cooperate? That's why he figured, oh, I could tell Joe the story. Makes no difference. I'm going to tell it to the feds anyway.
I'm going to say two things to that. You got to remember one thing, like where you and I are, because Eddie was a good guy, but he wasn't like more or less like us. You were never supposed to ever mention a killing. But some guys, don't forget too, they also kind of want to have like, some of them brag about it a little bit. They want to have that kind of, hey, look at me, I'm a killer, watch out for me,
Right, they want those street creds that nobody knows about to feel, I
That's
put
right.
my work in.
That's right. And so, like you and I, we didn't really need that kind of publicity, if you want to say it that way. Uh, but so it could have been that he was going to cooperate, or at least I think he was the type of person who wanted to know his options if he had an easy way out, just in case anything bad happened to him.
Right, right. Now, with that case too, at that time was because I know there was two other co-defendants. Another one was Carl Kuzi, and
Yes,
another one was
I
Robert
never met him.
Pasculo. Were they locked up as well at that time?
Dominic, I never met him that I can remember. I only remember Eddie because, you know, we were hanging around. We were in the same unit and stuff. So, we did a lot of hanging out, I guess.
Right, because at one time too, Joe, I don't know if you heard, they put a wire on Robert Pascula, who Robert was a young kid around me in Hazel Towers growing up. And I told this story before that, while I was doing my run to my spots, I had a massive drug business at one time up there with Michael Sullivan. Robert was in the car while I was doing collections, and he just remembered the whole back of the car was loaded with money. Because when I did meet up with him in jail, he stated, well, because of you, I started dealing drugs because I wanted that money. I wanted the car, cars, jewelry. So I basically was an influence on him. And that's how the streets get you. You see nice things that when people obtain them so easily, and a lot of people, a lot of young kids want that lifestyle. And Robert happened to be one of them. But what I'm getting at is with Robert, he wound up taking a plea deal, I know, in the case for 20 years, but they put a bad wire on him that he cooperated. Did you ever hear anything about that?
I heard of Robert, but I don't remember him ever cooperating. I forget if.
Well, just for the people out there, Robert did not cooperate on his case, but there was a bad wire put on him. And again, we'll go back to the two people. Ralphie,
Right.
I think it was Hippie and Sal Larka that actually were backing that Robert was a cooperator. And Joe, that's another thing. It's like, here's a guy doing his time. He took a plea deal. They said, well, he did a bad allocation, meaning where they admit to the crime, but the guy got 20 years. He pled out. And he wasn't the
Yes.
one who did the killing.
So, what kind of a great deal is 20 years? I mean, you see, this is the whole thing about that life. And you and I go back a long way with a lot of people, like we mentioned, Fat Mongo and them, and Uncle Rudy. You know, back then it seemed a lot more different. You know, if you go away to jail, if you get arrested, you get pinched, whatever it is, instead of embracing you and trying to say, listen, you're going to be okay, we're going to take care of everything, they act like they don't know you anymore. Like they cut you off, like all of a sudden you become an orphan. You know, I remember, and I mentioned in my last, I think at our last show, it was about Danny Ticchio. There was a guy I was with, Louis Mena, and I don't mean to get off the subject, but this guy, Louis Mena, he introduced me to a few guys that were in the Gambino family. As a matter of fact, he told me about a lot about Tommy Karate, the things that I didn't even know. There was a guy, Richie Davis. He used to have pictures of hunting and all of this stuff, and I didn't really know what he was. He says, "Doesn't he look like an accountant?" And I says, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, he does." And sure enough, he was counting fingers, hands. I mean, he was burying the bodies and chopping them up. I didn't know that. I was
Uh,
kind of shocked. But he's a funny guy. Here's a guy at Christmas time. He gave me a Christmas card. He says, $50 redeemable upon my release. Okay, thanks. But anyway, they started scaring Louis, like threatening him. You better do the right thing. You know who you're around. I mean, listen, we all know what could happen when you go bad and you're going to start thinking the wrong way. But instead of saying, hey, listen, don't worry, Louis, everything's going to be okay. You're with us. You're never going to be out of the picture. You're never going to be away from us. We're always going to help you. They stick it to you like I think I had mentioned about, I don't know if it was you or one of my other episodes about Mikey Francis. Here's a guy making millions of dollars, giving them more money than they ever seen, and then they pull him into sit down to threaten him to, hey, remember you're over here and this and that. He didn't do anything wrong. So it's that life that it makes it look like you were saying that looks good and it does feel good. But why did they just keep with it like that? Why they gotta forget about you the minute you get pinched or something bad, like putting a bad wire on somebody that takes a plea deal? I don't get it.
Well, Joe, it happens. You know why? Because you have a lot of people in that life who shouldn't be in that life. You
Well,
have a
that's
lot of
true.
people who can't rub two nickels together.
Yeah,
They don't know how to earn. And once they finally get some money in because of somebody going to jail or something happened, they're afraid of losing it. And
right.
what happens then, Joe, they just forget about you, out of sight, out of mind. You're only good as your last dollar you bring in. You're only good as your last killing you just did. And that's what's bad about the life, and myself included. I mean, I had a massive crew of guys around me. I had
Yes.
about 27 made guys in my crew.
Right.
And out of the 27, there was maybe about five, I would say, five, six, seven, around that number that were incarcerated. I made sure those guys had $500 a piece each in their commissary every month. Took money out of my pocket, and Vinny asked me, "Why are you sending them so much money?" I said, "Well, number one, I can. I'm earning like that on the streets and legitimately. So I'm fortunate enough to do so. And I want them to feel that we didn't forget about them because I knew how it was to be in jail, to be locked up, not receiving a
Right.
commissary. And really, all the guys except Bruno, I didn't owe them anything. They were put into my crew and then they were locked up. Or while they were locked up, they were put into my crew. So I did the right thing by them sending them some money. And one of them was even, who was it? I forgot anyway.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
but I just made sure they had the money because I know how it is, and I wanted them to
Yeah.
feel good that they had the support from the crime family, as everybody should. But a lot of people aren't like that, and that's what
No.
makes, I guess, the life put a bad taste in people that know the life. It's not as glamorous as they portray on the movie screens, on the big screens.
No.
But I know with Robert Bascula, Eddie Kavanov, and Carl Cousy, Eddie Kavanagh, Carl Cousy both went bad. Robert did not go bad.
No. I
And
met
yet they
them
wanted to
too.
put a label on Robert and making it look like Eddie and Carl were good. And I think Giordano was also involved in that case, had some type of involvement when he flipped
Yes.
as well. But thank God Robert was smart enough to take a plea deal. He got out. But they were all involved in cocaine, heroin trafficking. And then, of course, they had the two bodies on them because of Eddie Kavanagh.
Well, I believe it was what they called, I think it was called the horse collar case or something like that. There was like 30 something guys that were involved in that drug deal. And so you either had to start taking a plea before somebody started really opening up their mouth.
Right, right.
So it
But
was it was a lot of guys on there. Matter of fact, that one of the guys that I was talking about where Ralphie made money in the joint, one of the guys he introduced me to, this guy had $20 million cash money in his apartment getting ready to ship to Colombia.
wow,
And
that's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, this is crazy. So, but like you said, you're as good as the last envelope you gave them or whatever, and then it's just sad because you talk about a brotherhood. Look, here it is, you and I, after even the stuff that I did to you, and all of this other stuff. I mean, and that's why I felt bad about a lot of things. Dominic, in my lifetime, you didn't do nothing to me. I had an agenda, and in my mind, all wise guys were no good anymore.
Right.
After what they did to my father, because or supposedly what they did to my dad. It
Well,
was a
Joe,
type of thing
not to
where I said, "You
interrupt you,
killed my father."
Joe, not to interrupt you, but tell the
Yes.
viewers, because a lot of people are just turning in for the first time. What do you mean? What happened with your father? Real quick, so they know. Like I just to educate them.
I was told by the FBI, and I have still no proof of this, that my father was murdered while he was on the lam hiding from the FBI. I never got to find out anything what happened, as much as I tried to, but that set me off in a different direction altogether. I hated everything about that life because I saw my dad live for that life. That's all he had. Some people just, that's all he had. But I just hate talking about it. I still relive it every time. I still got PTSD from my time. I still got horror stories about my father being murdered for no reason. So when I hear that happened to me, it set me off in a different direction. And like I said, excuses aside or anything like that, I hated everybody that was involved in that life. And then, of course, and I grew up around it, like you said. I mean, me and Uncle Rudy, I mean, he gave me a $50 bill when I was like 12 years old, which was a lot of money back then. He said, "Hey, kid, go buy yourself some fireworks or something," you know? I mean, and then I meet guys like you who I just bond with.
Right.
And I'm like, and I hate myself even more for what I did.
Yeah, but Joe, you know what? I look at it now because now I could sit back and assess everything. Yes, at one time when I found out, I'm like, oh, this dirty MF. You know, I'd kill you in a heartbeat. Look to kill you. But now I cooperated myself, and I'm sitting back and I'm assessing everything, and I'm like, wow, Joe could have burnt me so many times. You had my trust. You knew about one of the things you knew about was we had a massive gambling operation out of Costa Rica. And I even told you, I think, if I recall correctly, that, hey, Joe, if you have any customers, bring them this way. We'll put you on a 50-50 sheet where you take no loss. And you could have set me up easily, but you didn't. Why, Joe?
Do you know that the FBI still doesn't know about that from me?
Got it.
About the offshore stuff. I never reported that. It was just because of the way we worked together. You know, I didn't like what I was doing, number one, and I didn't want to hurt you, number two. I mean, look, I love you then. I love you now, and I wanted to ask you something about that too. A couple of things, if you don't mind me, that you just made me thinking. You asked me for 20,000 once. You remember that?
Yes.
Did you really need the money, or you just was just seeing if I was going to give it to you?
I could have went elsewhere for the money. Well, yeah. We did need it. I didn't need it. That was my boy Vincent.
Okay.
He needed the money. Actually, I forgot what it was for. So I said, let me go see Joe, because I wanted to see if you would hand it. I knew you had the money, but I wanted to see how eager you would be to give it, or not to give it. I wanted to see what you would do. And to let the viewers know, he did give me the money. And how long did I take it until I paid you back? And what did you do once I paid you back?
You told me you'd give it back to me in a couple of weeks. You gave me 10,000 after 2 weeks, and then the third week you gave me the other 10.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Vinny was kind of like hiding out back then too, and we can go into that another time, because I didn't even know where he was staying at that time, and we had to go. It was kind of like secret, but then you gave me the money in the car, and I even told you, I looked at the money and I said, Dominic, let's never money ever come between us, because I seen what it does to people, you know what I mean? And you said no.
Right.
Then I always wanted to ask you too, when did you even find out that I cooperated? Like what was your reaction when you first heard it? Like I never even asked you this before.
Oh, I'm not even sure, Joe. I think it might have been after I cooperated, but okay. I think, I'm not sure. And I know when I heard that, like I really wanted to kill you, even though I was cooperating. I'm not sure if I was cooperating, I wasn't. But the first thought that came to my head, like, I felt betrayed. I felt, oh my God, because I knew we were close. But as the years went on, and, you know, remember when I cooperated, it took me about 4 or 5 years just to get those demons out of my mind, because it bothered me every day. That was the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life. But once I was able, that I healed myself within and I accepted the fact, then I assessed everything else that happened. You were one of them, and I said, wow, he could have set me up so many different times, and yet he didn't. So I was fortunate for that. And thank you for actually not setting me up, being a true friend, a brother. And I understand you were on a mission. You had your own motives why you were cooperating, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you established that reason being was to find out who killed your father, and then once you did find out, let the feds take it from there.
Yes. Yes. There's so many other things too that we'll have to talk about all of that too as well. I know, especially since we differ a little bit about the feds, because our situations were actually different. And so, with let, I remember you asking me to come up to, kind of like give me a lowdown about why you cooperated. And I seen you in prison at that time. And you told me the story. So I totally understand where you were coming from. I knew it right away.
Right. You know what, Joe? Let's save that one for the next episode. We'll talk about when I sent for you while I was incarcerated, and we'll talk about that. But Joe, thank you for coming on, being a partner on this channel, being a true friend, a brother. Because, folks, to have somebody like Joe back into my life, somebody who knows me from my past, and I know Joe from his past, and that we're working together, putting out content on YouTube and in social media, we have the advantage moving forward. Reason being, Joe and I know each other very well, and this is not just a new relationship. This is an old relationship that weathered many storms, especially with the government, without the government, in the streets, out of the streets. And now we're together, so it makes us even more powerful. So with that, Joe, thank you again for joining. Hopefully we'll get you here sitting live one-on-one where we're hitting the audience. But for now, we'll do it via Zoom. I love you, pal, and have a great day.
Thanks, Dominic. Love you too. And I'm so proud to be a part of this, and I hope we can really reach a lot of good people out there.
Oh, we definitely will. And for those of you out there, please hit that subscribe button if you like this show. Hit the like button. Also, don't forget, go to egvodka.com, order your liquor today, drink responsibly, and have a good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Much love. Peace out.